From the hatcheries of Wadi Holdings Company in the suburbs of Cairo, Egypt, 400,000 chicks are shipped out daily to farmers who buy them wholesale. Founded, owned, and managed by members of the Fraji and Nasrallah families, Wadi Holdings started out as only a small shop in 1984, but good advice on ways of sound corporate governance has helped the company remain one of Egypt's biggest and most successful. Now, in addition to the poultry rearing, Wadi Holdings is involved in agribusiness, agricultural plantations, food processing, olive oil, and glass production.
We do have corporate governance inherent in our policies, but putting it into a more structured frame, developing it further was very important for us. And if it wasn't really for IFC, we couldn't really take this further.
IFC made us understand what corporate governance is all about. And after, of course, doing a very thorough analysis and study of the business and of the family, and coming up with a long list of recommendations, and of which we have applied some, others we are still working on. It has given us a longer-term vision of the business.
IFC, or International Finance Corporation, is assisting clients around the world through its Corporate Governance Advisory Services, or CG Advisory Services. CG Advisory Services provide valuable advice on corporate governance, the system by which companies are directed and controlled. This work to improve or adopt sound governance practices in turn contributes to sustainable economic development by enhancing the performance of companies and increasing their access to outside capital. It also contributes more broadly to IFC's mission to promote sustainable private sector investment in developing countries. A main focus of the CG Advisory Services is private sector companies and banks.
We look at the board structures of the company, we scrutinize the control environment, internal controls, internal audit, we assess the disclosure level of the company, how transparent it is, and finally we look into protection of minority shareholders.
Responding to CG Advisory Services advice, Wadi Holdings moved to strengthen its board by hiring outside professional directors able to make independent decisions. Family assemblies and councils were initiated, and an agreement was signed with minority shareholders assuring them of their rights in the business. Wadi Holdings has also issued an employment policy clarifying the company's employment rules.
It tells family members when they should start preparing for exiting the business. It talks about how to remunerate the family members. It also reassures the non-family members who are employed in the business that they are not going to lose their post in the future for a family member who is going to join our operation.
Tangible results of applying IFC's corporate governance advice include Wadi's high rate of employee retention, a marked growth in the company's revenue, an ability to negotiate better credit rates with banks, and an increase in possible investors.
In any investor coming and seeing that we are structuring our business and structuring our family, it's going to give him a great degree of assurance to join, to invest in Wadi. It also has a lot of impact on our creditors, which, I mean, when they know that we are addressing these issues inside the company, they tend to look at us with different eyes.
Another company advised by the CG Advisory Services is Asnova Holding, a closely held company based in Kiev, Ukraine. It's Ukraine's biggest distributor of well-known global consumer products and one of the country's biggest players in logistics, warehousing, and wholesale cosmetics. Asnova CEO Orfan Ruliev says adopting good corporate governance practices has improved effectiveness of Asnova's operations and heightened its appeal to investors.
The corporate governance, as for me, has two aspects. One of them is to make the decision-making process within the company efficient in order to help to develop business as much as possible. On the other hand, it is for external investors. It makes the company more understandable for them, decision-making more understandable, and as a result, the market value of the company will be higher.
Mr. Ruliev says that after assessing Asnova, IFC advised the company to hire a corporate secretary to help make and record company decisions, adding to the overall effectiveness of the business.
Any vital decisions in Asnova Holding are made on written basis with the help of corporate secretary, and this person is going to be involved in decision-making process. And he is also part and parcel of meeting of the supervisory board and the management board. And this person has to have some authorities and responsibilities. It is a new position in the decision-making chain.
Olena Globa, the newly hired corporate secretary, says that with training she's received from IFC's Corporate Governance Advisory Services project, she's able to clearly define decisions and roles within the company that contribute to its productivity.
I circulate all this decision amongst those persons who are involved in the performance of these decisions. For example, the director understands where is the scope of his responsibility and where is the scope of responsibility of the supervisory board. And supervisory board doesn't interfere in his activities.
Companies looking to invest in Asnova say they are motivated by its growing reputation for sound corporate governance.
When we met with Asnova and were considering the transaction, we took a lot of comfort from the existing relationship that they already had with IFC, mostly because we understood that there had been a very rigorous due diligence process that they had already gone through.
In addition to its work with companies, IFC's CG Advisory Services are also extending their advice to banks on ways of improving direction.
In terms of what it brings to the banks themselves, it's also very clearly in their interest, because if corporate governance is better, if they can show that, they have a better chance to attract foreign investors, and the terms and conditions that they can obtain are consequently better.
Institutes of education, policymakers, NGOs, and the media also gain from IFC's Corporate Governance Advisory Services.
We also work with the policymakers on the regulatory environment, making sure that there's a good corporate governance framework. We work with educational institutions, helping them to design curricula or introduce corporate governance, elements of corporate governance into law school and business school programs. We also work with the media, training journalists on what is corporate governance.
Professors at this university in Ukraine received training and teaching materials from CG Advisory Services to create specialized courses. Classes simulate real-life board meetings of companies and banks.
Tomorrow our students will join large corporations as leaders. These are our best students, and so it is important for them to learn, for us to instill in them these values of corporate governance.
I would say the following. Corporate governance is about principles.
28-year-old Mohammed Gad says a better understanding of corporate governance improved his ability to do his job as an economic journalist in Egypt. He recently attended a media training session in economic reporting, organized by the IFC's corporate governance program based in Cairo.
When reviewing company or bank statements, it could at first appear there are no irregularities, but there could be among those figures one figure that points to a red flag. I learned to scrutinize in a new way.
He says the course gave him a deeper understanding of good corporate governance, as well as a sense of what goes wrong when it's not so good.